Hey everybody, I'm Kevin.
And I'm Kayla.
We love movies.
And talking about them.
This is the Martini Window, with such credits as the TV series The Flash, the TV series Cedar Cove, and the first night at the museum. Welcome everybody, Mr. Neil McBride. Neil, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Neil, so tell us a little about yourself.
Well, you too. I've crossed paths with you many times on the film sets out there, but I have been a film technician for close to 27 years. I was a grip for 14 years. So on the first night at the museum, I was a dolly grip. And if you IMDb me, you'll see there's a couple categories. And there's one where there's a great picture of me pushing Mr. Sean Levy on a dolly.
Director of the new Deadpool movie.
Yeah, right?
Directing the new Deadpool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. You know, I had such hopes of it coming back, but hey.
Well, supposedly Vancouver, I mean, they've been saying in the trades that we're supposed to be getting the exteriors. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so, there's something to be, it'd be nice to get some MCU over in Vancouver.
Right? I completely agree.
I mean, it's Van City Ryan's movie, so.
Yeah. It's literally in his name.
I know.
It is.
It's in his DNA, for God's sake. So come on.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Now, Neil, you, myself, and Kayla, we both know you from our time working on The Flash for the last several years, where
Yes.
I got to know you quite well. But in that time, you started working on some of your own solo stuff with Mr. Josh Bradford, who we've had on the show before. He was actually on our first episode.
Yes.
And with Mr. Cam Scott Trask. You've recently been having some festival success with you guys short, and you got a new one coming out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So, a brief history. Cam and Josh were talking, and I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And as you do on film sets, and they're like, "We're thinking of shooting short." I'm like, "I want to produce it," and I just butted in and barged in and said I wanted to do it. I've produced a couple rock videos back in the day for a band called Left Spine Down, local Vancouver.
Oh, I love Left Spine Down.
Oh,
Love
well,
that
there you
band.
go.
Yeah, actually, Kayla knows one of the band members too.
Do you know Kane?
Yeah. Yes. I went to the Netherworld local Burning Man event on the island on a bright pink bus with him as one of the passengers.
She has also been to Burning Man, though.
Oh, we're gonna have to. Well, that's an episode right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Kane's wonderful. So a buddy of mine, who I used to grip with, who I gripped with on Tron and various other movies, is a very skilled DP when he wants to, but he works. He works like grip usually in feature land. So Troy was like, "I'm gonna shoot 2 rock videos for my friends, and you're gonna produce it and be craft service and transportation and wardrobe and grip and lighting and this and that. And here's the list again for me." So we shot 2 videos. We found 2 great locations. One of them was actually a cover of a Joy Division song, which I was very excited about. She's Lost Control. But anyway, Troy's done some great work, and we did that. So I've was on The Flash, always anxious to try something new with friends. So I butted in and said I want to produce because it's a different avenue I've wanted to explore, and it's been a lot of fun. And we have had success. You know, Josh has been very, very busy with it, and he's wonderful that way because he is a mover and a shaker, while I have had to pump the brakes a little bit because I had a baby 5 months ago. So
yes, you did. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you, guys. So that's why, luckily, you gave me this time because we had to wait for baby to go to bed. So thank you two, for doing this.
Oh, no worries. In case anyone's not aware, we normally record Sunday mornings and Sunday afternoons. We're currently doing this at, it's currently 8:15 on a Monday night. We wanted to make sure to help out Neil here and get him on the show.
You got your angels. Angels.
Oh, well, thank you kindly.
Yeah.
So today, the movie you picked was an absolute classic, Paul Verhoeven's 1987 capitalist satirical nightmare of a classic,
Yes.
ROBOCOP, starring
Yes.
Peter Weller and Red Foreman himself, Kurtwood Smith.
Oh, it was beautiful in the movie. He's just beautiful.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to say for a man who's always looked exactly that age.
He's timeless, right?
You could remake this movie again now and still cast him.
Yeah, you could cast him and change nothing about his character.
Yeah.
So, let's dive into this. So tell us why you wanted to go with RoboCop. Not that I have any complaints.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, Kevin, is I was listening to your chat with Chelsea, and you said something which I completely agree with, because you were discussing, you said something like, the quote was like, well, there's only one movie that's absolutely perfect, and it's Back to the Future. And I was like, that's the movie I thought of, which is pretty much the perfect movie. But I saw RoboCop when I was like 14, was blown away, because I was like, this is just so over the top, and I absolutely love it. And as I've gotten older, I still joke about it with friends who've seen it. The effects for the time I loved, and I just watched it a couple days ago just to refresh it, because I watch it yearly, and I was like, I love that little stop motion stuff they had, and just the lines in it, like so many great lines that still to the I have a coworker named Bob, and I'm like, can you fly, Bobby? Which is one of the lines in the movie that Kurt said when he throws the guy out of the back of the car. Like, just stuff that has stuck with me, and it's for me,
I've used I'd buy that for $1 for so many times at work. Before I show something to a director, that was my line going back to the animators. Yeah, I'd buy that for $1. I'll show them right away.
Yeah. We're like, we're waiting, Kevin, we're waiting. And you're like, yeah, just give me a second.
I got a quote. Hold on. I got a quote.
I have had a director ask me like how long a costume change is going to take, and it's 3 minutes away. I've actively just dropped it. I'll give you the well in 3 minutes.
Nice. And it worked.
It worked. He laughed and wasn't mad.
Yeah. That's the thing. If you can deflect with some form of reaction that's positive, I think you're going to be okay most of the time. I have been in the crosshairs back in the Dolly days, where I am literally trying to level a leveling head low mode with literally a DP and a camera operator just yelling at me from both sides. And I just kept my head down, made a joke, and said, okay, I'm done. And they're like, oh, okay, great, let's go. But you just got to go. That's what we do, guys. That's what we do. We just keep the momentum going.
So exactly. I want to start off here. You were saying you saw RoboCop the first time at 14 years old. Now, did you see this in the theater at 14 years old?
Well,
and if so, what movie did you buy a ticket to sneak into RoboCop?
Well, nicely done, sir. Very, very good. No, so what we used to do is, growing up, there was a theater called the Hollywood Theater on Broadway in Kitsilano in sunny Vancouver, Canada. And they had the daily show, the double bill Friday and Saturday nights for $5. And like, I grew up there because we were underage. So what do we do? Let's go to movies. And they always had it was like Lost Boys and like Terminator 2 or something. Completely wrong era, but like the double bills were always top notch. It was like, I saw Aliens there for the first time. I saw RoboCop there for the first time, because they didn't ID anybody. They didn't care. Just as long as you paid, you were in. Because it was basically, you'd get it 6 months later or a year later there at that point.
So Hollywood Theater at this time was a second-run theater, you're saying?
Correct. And, God, man, I saw everything. Full Metal Jacket, Lost Boys, Garbage Romance, just whatever was there, we didn't care. It was just the place to go.
But that's what you did back then, man. Like, we're obviously you and I are different generations, but I mean, Kayla and I were effectively one of the last generations that didn't have like this instantaneous media that we have nowadays. Yeah. So that's what you did though. You went, Kayla, you told me a story about how you saw Hairspray 17 times?
Yes. I went to university at a little town, or a little city, I believe, called Ipswich in Queensland. Yep. And I was at the only university there. It was a very small city. It was a 15-minute bus ride just to get to the university, and then another hour train ride back to my house. So when I had split classes during the day, I would just go to the theater with my friends. And then we just kept watching Hairspray. I think every time they saw us come in, they would roll their eyes, and we eventually just... We spent an overnight learning the Corny Collins dance, and I think some people were scared.
Nice. Yeah. You're like, I can do it better than you people. And they were like, hey, what?
Why did they learn this coordinated dance? Aren't they meant to be working on their education?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, they're super fans. They're back again.
That what you're telling me about Hollywood Theater, that's because that's actually a little live venue nowadays, eh?
I know. I'm dying to go and see a live show there because I've heard great stuff about the sound there, and it was always a beautiful little theater.
It's a really nice live theater. I saw Magic Sword with Dance with the Dead there, and it was quite good. Yeah, I remember I wanted to go see K-Flay there, and I think I got tickets for it, but then this weird thing happened where the whole world shut down.
Oh, yeah. Heard about
Did you hear about that? Yeah.
I've heard about that, yeah. I've read about that. I've seen it on the old YouTube.
I'm sure it never happened.
Yeah. Exactly.
So RoboCop. So
yes,
tell us more. So you saw this at 14. You saw it at the theater at the second Hollywood Theater. It was a double bill. They never ID'd because they're probably stoned at the front window or just didn't care because it was that era. All right,
at this time, this was still the late 80s. This was still an era of just like whatever.
RoboCop came out in 87, so
yeah, I probably saw it in 88. Okay.
It came out the year I was born.
Right. Another great reason. Another great year, right?
So now, this movie's got a lot to offer. Like for someone like yourself, like what was the effect that it left on you? Like why is it today you're asking about you're choosing RoboCop? You know what I mean? Because that was a great era of movies to be going to the theater for constantly.
Because well, it just stuck with me because I'm a comic book guy, so I love that it was this hero who literally had a costume, a uniform. It was me, it was like the beginning of that era because when did Keaton's Batman come out? 88, 89?
89.
Yeah, so like we hadn't begun that level yet. So for me, I was like, he's in an outfit. You know, like, because my heroes were still Schwarzenegger, who was just in a tank top and camo pants, right? Because Predator had probably just come out at that time, too. And I was like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen, because I was a young teenager and just wanted to see.
It's also a great movie.
Shot. And it's a great movie. Predator is way up there with me. And that has some dynamite lines from Jesse Ventura, like just, stick with me. And that's the thing, there was just, I think with film, television, anything like that has something that sticks with you, then you're going to have a fondness for it. And for me, it was always just like, there was just a couple lines in RoboCop that were just so silly, but just so great. You know, I buy that for $1. And there's a scene where Dick Jones has just given Boddicker a whole whack of new weapons to take down RoboCop. So the guys are on the street shooting their new huge rifles and they're blowing up everything.
And he destroys the guy's car because he can't let him not have anything nice.
That's right. He's like, come on, Clarence. But you know, he just goes, the guy in the motorbike guy, the guy in the motorcycle jacket, he was like, oh, I like it. Like just all the lines like that just stuck with me, that I would occasionally yell out as a silly young teenager walking down the street if I saw something I liked, or you know, I buy that for $1, still one. And just there's, you know, and just the performances I love, because back to Kurtwood Smith, just like every line he says is just almost fantastic in it. And it's just, and for me also the fact that it was so extreme, like it was so violent.
Oh, it does not hold back whatsoever.
No, so I was just like, what the hell is this, right?
And of course, that was the sort of thing with the movie that obviously didn't really hold on after the first movie for a while.
Yeah, totally.
I also feel like the ultra violence of the movie works really well with the cynicism of like all the advertisements, how everybody is just so like disenfranchised with society. No one sees anyone as a person anymore. It's all about like just buying things. And when you just have this ultra violence that nobody is reacting to, and they just commit to it in such a straight way. Yeah, and you know, for me, I love the fact that there was just so many degrees of the violence too, because there's just like, okay, you got the classic guns, a lot of machine guns, which is great, but you know, like RoboCop punching through a wall, pulling a guy through a wall, and then one punching him through a window because he's holding the mayor hostage. And he's like, you know, I want a car with really shitty gas mileage. And just like, you know, just lines like that, which are comedic, but also so extreme of what's happening action-wise. And then, of course, And then later on, they actually throw in an ad for the car that he was talking about.
Yeah, and it's a dinosaur. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. It's a piece of junk. And the car is called FUX. It sucks, but that's Detroit, and that's also part of the whole decay of Detroit. The industry's dying in there, and thank God they need RoboCop there to save Detroit, old Detroit. Like, and back to the degrees, like the effects in it too, like Phil
Tippett.
Pardon me?
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller.
The effects guy.
Yeah, his outfit is. I loved his outfit when he first came in, and just the noise of just the footsteps and everything, and I love the scene where motorcycle guy drives into the toxic waste, and then he's all peeling and melting. Like, I was like, this is magic. As a 14, 15-year-old, I was like, this has everything I need. And then they drive over him and he explodes all over the windshield. You're just like, yeah, this is the best.
So apparently with that scene, that was the favorite scene from the test screening.
Oh, really?
That was what the test audience is. They're like, this is the best scene in the movie.
Oh, that's so fun. Well,
just his death scene.
Yeah, it stuck with me. And then that guy went on to St. Elsewhere, or not St. Elsewhere, sorry. I guess it was ER or one Doctor Medical series for years and years. And I was like, wait a minute. That's the explosion. I like it guy. So, actors, they can do everything. They can cover all bases.
Oh man, no, I think it's kind of hard to talk about talking about a movie like RoboCop without really understanding like Paul Verhoeven and kind of what he was going for at the time too. Like, this has been referred to as the beginning of his unofficial dystopian trilogy, starting with RoboCop, then Total Recall, and then Starship Troopers.
Yeah,
and he's referred to this as it's been referred to as unofficial dystopian trilogy because it shows different levels of a dystopian future in one sense or another. One thing that becomes really clear is, you got Paul Verhoeven bringing his very European sensibilities to America for this movie.
Yeah.
I think he was the one that decided that the violence has to be so over the top because, in his words, it makes it funnier. I love that. But then, of course, you have just like Kayla was looking up earlier, some of the people here, and it's just, you have just masters of the effect. Like, you're talking about the effects, and you really can't talk about this movie without it because you got like Rick Boughton, you got what was it? Rob Bowden. You got Phil Tippett. We actually just went to go see Jurassic Park at the theater today, and Phil Tippett was, of course, the dinosaur supervisor on that. You had one job, sir. But it's like you got these powerhouses of the era for special effects working on this. And then to have somebody like Paul Verhoeven, who has a European sensibility to his filmmaking, to really actually take the time to allow the effects to breathe and allow the effects to make the real, like what you're saying with that kind of subtle stop motion effect with it is a nature of the era. But, it works so well in the world that he makes and in the visuals that he creates. He takes these, for lack of better words, kind of campy aspects, but makes them just feel so real. Like he's taking them as they're being taken as seriously as you would any other story.
Oh, I know. And, that's, to me, I realize it's a 30-year-old film, but I'm like, still looks good. I still appreciate it. Compared to some of the effects you see today, too, you're just like, yeah. Like, I was watching a Brian De Palma documentary recently, and he was talking about effects. And he was just like, effects, they'll blow up something, and an engine will fly into your window. And then the next day, I watched Air Force One, and Air Force One goes down, and the engine blows up right into the screen. And I was like, Brian De Palma knew. He was way ahead of the...
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I have a little story for you guys regarding RoboCop, and this is another reason it's so sensitive to me. Many years ago, I was out and about downtown Vancouver. I had some drinks, and I went to the Gerard Lounge where all the actors go. And I was like, who's going to be in the Gerard Lounge tonight? Let's see. So I walk in, and there is Miguel Ferreira. Miguel Ferreira in RoboCop is the guy who helps develop RoboCop.
Yeah.
And he's got some fucking fantastic... he's got some wonderful dialogue in that movie because he's just this young brass guy who doesn't care. He's not scared of Dick Jones. He's cocky. So funny. And another thing for me too is there was so much swearing in that movie. Like as a young guy, I'm like, this is awesome. But see Miguel Ferreira, and I just walk up to him. I'm like, Mr. Ferreira, I'm sorry. I hate to say this, but RoboCop is one of my favorite movies. I don't want to be offensive in any way. I hope I'm not insulting you, but to me, it's just one of my favorite movies. I think it's so great. He's like, dude, what's your name? I go, it's Neil. He's like, Neil, no offense at all. If it wasn't for RoboCop, I could not get a job. And after RoboCop, my phone lit up, and I've been working ever since. So no offense at all. And I was like, awesome. I love you, and I love that movie. So I think what RoboCop did, it helped everyone out.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And actually, that the movie also parlayed into Total Recall itself. Paul Verhoeven was able to use the high box office to be able to pitch his next movie, which with obviously with Arnold Schwarzenegger for Total Recall.
Right. Well, now, they were trying to get Schwarzenegger in it, but they're like, he can't fit in these suits.
Yeah.
And you know what? Schwarzenegger would have changed the effect of it. Like,
I agree.
Peter Weller's a damn good actor.
Oh yeah.
And also, I like that he was a regular-sized guy. Like, he was still very brave and a police officer, but he was a regular guy. He wasn't like Superman, you know.
Yeah, and that's, I think, another thing which gives it a little bit more, pardon the pun, but realism, because you're like, he's this skinny guy who somehow survives getting assaulted by 4 shotguns that get unloaded on him, but
and a bullet in the head.
The bullet in the head, exactly. Yeah. But you're right. I think if Schwarzenegger wasn't there, you would have been like, yeah, that's Arnold. But who knows? Maybe Arnold was still shooting Predator at the time. I don't know. But I was reading up on RoboCop, and the woman who plays his partner,
Nancy Allen,
who I didn't know was married to Brian De Palma. He's like, oh yeah, I was married.
What?
Yeah,
really?
They were married for like 8 or 9 years.
Holy crap!
Wow.
Yeah, because he uses her in 2 or 3 of his movies. She's in Blowout. She's in I don't think she's in Carrie as one of the girls, and she's in something else of his. But
oh my god!
Yeah, they said they were going to use this woman named Stephanie Zimbalist. And to those of people out there who are my age, I am 50. Stephanie Zimbalist played she was on Remington Steele. And she was the lead woman on Remington Steele. And Remington Steele to me is it also is close to my heart. Remington Steele, of course, the early Pierce Brosnan NBC series, which ran for years, which cost Pierce Brosnan 2 James Bond movies because NBC wouldn't release them. So they had to bring in...
until Christopher Columbus had worked with him on Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Yes.
And recommended him to the Broccoli family after Timothy Dalton had left the role. And he got his because he talked to him on the set of that movie about how he had missed out on the chance, and he got to work with Pierce Brosnan and ended up using that as an opportunity to be like, hire him. Go make GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually just watched Mrs. Doubtfire. We did an episode of Mrs. Doubtfire coming up pretty soon. Actually, that was great. A tidbit that we talked about in there too.
Can't wait.
Oh, thank you. One thing I got to say about this movie is, and I love this about Paul Verhoeven, I always love how adept he is at satire and commentary without ever turning his heel on it.
Yeah.
Like, you're watching this movie at the same time that you are watching a corporate thriller, and you're watching people try to cutthroat each other in the boardroom, and and it's all, but the product is literally a person. The product are people, and it's like that. The concept that Paul Verhoeven thought, I don't see it hard to believe that we basically privatized most of our police force. Like, it's just that very idea. And so this whole movie, where it's like, the thing is that I love about it, though, is that all the aspects about the corporate thriller stuff, the whole the backroom dealings, all that, it's so effective because it's never winking at the audience about what it is. Yeah, it's literally, those scenes could be a scene from Wall Street or something like that, but it just happens to be Omnicorp talking about the RoboCop project.
I love that you actually brought up that scene, because as a costumer, something I noticed in the first board scene where you're introduced to Dick in that is he's the only person in that room wearing red. And he's wearing an entirely gray suit.
Yeah.
So you're like, this guy is evil and morally gray. A lot of
Yeah.
the people in there are wearing gray suits and very like
Yeah.
murky kind of colors. And
Yeah.
I mean,
We
it's
should-
a small detail, but I noticed it immediately because it tells you who the people are.
Yeah. And they all are. They're all just puppets there. And just like, yep, agreeers. Except for good old Miguel there, who's just like, I'm waiting for my chance. I'm waiting for my chance. And then, of course, the poor schmuck who works for the company there, and they use him as an example with Ed 209. And they're like, point the gun at Ed 209 there, and everything's going to be okay.
Right?
You have 10 seconds to comply.
Yeah, exactly. And to me as a kid, too, being a sci-fi fan, I was like, this is amazing. There's robots. And of course, the action in it, and the humor in it, and I'm going to throw this off for 1 second. Have you guys ever seen the comedy skit that they've done where I can't remember who it is, but the scene where the two guys attack the girl and they're cutting her hair, and then RoboCop shoots her through the dress?
Oh, yeah, okay. So this actually isn't even a comedy sketch. This is actually a feature-length remake of RoboCop. So trust me on this. So when the RoboCop remake was coming out in 2014, a group of filmmakers across the internet banded together to create what was called Our RoboCop Remake. It was a crowdsourced remake of RoboCop where each team of filmmakers got a different scene. So, so the guys who got, some people would do it where like they did the whole scene in Lego. Some would do the whole scene in stop frame.
Really? Some
would do it in just like sweated, be kind of rewind style. Then the guys who got the scene where they shoot the guy in the dick, they ended up putting some money into it, and as you could tell, they got pretty close on the set design and on the cinematography and everything. But only for what you're talking about to happen afterwards, where it's not just one guy getting shot in the dick, it's another guy getting shot in the dick, and then other people taking other women with their dicks out to get shot, and it's just like, I mean, is he shooting at like 50 freaking people?
Yeah, it just keeps going on and on and on. But my friend showed it to me on set, and I was dying in the corner, like, do not laugh. This is serious. They're blocking, and just the classic. Here, check this out. And I was just like, immediately sucked in because I like, ooh, RoboCop, and then it was like the penis after penis after penis getting blown to bits. I was like, this is magic. Whoever did this, so, and I love that. I love the fact that people do cinema like that, like. Bring it on.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. I personally am a big fan of the crowdsourced remake fan concept. There's been a few that I've seen, and they're pretty fun. That's one of them, though, and it's the whole movie, front to back, is remade by individual filmmakers around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to see this, man.
You got to. It's fantastic. It's really cool.
I want to see the Lego scenes.
The Lego scenes? I mean, the whole thing's pretty fun to watch. But, going back to what I was saying about a lot of the commentary on this. So it's like, what Paul Verhoeven was trying to say about capitalism at the time and about the authoritarian government. I mean, there's a lot of movies that you see this kind of blend into. I mean, Kayla pointed out when we were watching the movie that there's very similar influence on the film Dread from 2012.
Which I love.
Yeah, fantastic movie. And Paul Verhoeven has never been somebody to really keep, like I said, keep that nuance,
Even some of the shots in Dread and the way they frame Judge Dredd is very similar to RoboCop, like going like the way he moves, the way he emotes. There's a lot of similarities, and I saw RoboCop as a kid and I loved it, but I didn't realize how much influence I could see in Dread.
Yeah. Or like the fact that go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and you were probably gonna say too, that the writers literally gave Verhoeven Judge Dredd comics and were like, this is what we want. And like there's a very maybe it's just
I actually didn't know that. Did not know that.
Yeah, and the Judge Dredd helmet and RoboCop's helmet kind of similar,
Yeah.
Well, maybe no.
I had no idea about that. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. The writer, I was reading up about it too. The writer was on set the whole time, and him and Verhoeven would be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Like they would improvise with the actors, and when Kurtwood Smith put the gum on the girls, on Dick Jones's secretary's name tag there, and he just goes, "You can keep that," and she's just like, "Great!" Like, and Kurtwood Smith was back to the Kurtwood Smith, brilliant work by Kurtwood Smith. And there's a scene where he spits blood when RoboCop brings him in and goes, "What's the charge?" He goes, "He's a cop killer," and then he spits on the piece of paper and he goes, "Just give me my call." Like they were like, that was improvised, and the writer sat there and like, "Yeah, do whatever, make your goal happen." So.
Oh my god, that is really cool. I mean, Kurtwood Smith is menacing in this movie, and being the age I was, I first knew him as Red Foreman. So when I first saw this movie, it was a different way of seeing him, especially because there was that dissonance to the fact that he looked the exact same as he did in that '70s show, basically. So there wasn't really that much. There was a little bit of dissonance to that, but no, he was menacing in this. And Clarence Bodiger, like the level of intensity they allowed him to have, they didn't need him to have any sort of like no retribution, no anything like that, which was also really cool about this era of movie villains. I found is that they were not afraid in this era of movies to let villains just be villains. We've kind of fallen into this trap nowadays where they feel like in a lot of movies that villains need to have a turn to sorry.
They need a sad backstory for why.
Yeah, right. It has to be a sadly justified backstory, or it has to be that they have a heel turn at the end, or something like that. But what I love is that they can introduce this movie with this guy, shooting a cop's hand off for fun. And the last time that you see him in this movie, he has not changed anymore, aside from the fact that he has more weapons now.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter if his henchman dies. Like, whatever, we got to keep going.
Yeah, he's getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's got a dream, and that's drugs and prostitution of New Detroit, which going to give him.
You can't deny a dream, you know what I mean? You can't deny the guy has goals. Has goals.
Exactly. and back to Dick Jones there, Ronnie Cox, because he's Mr. Sunshine. He's always the nice man. He's the dad or the priest or whatever. So in this movie, seeing him just be this evil bastard, and he was great. And he even said, he's like, I loved it. It was so fun. My character was just pure evil the whole time. Everything that came out of my mouth was pretty much evil. So it was great. And that's another thing, the simplicity of RoboCop. It's the good guys versus the good guy versus the bad guys. So, and luckily he's got his partner there, Miss Allen there to give him a hand there, and Lewis to give him a hand.
I will say too with a lot of that, like, yeah, it's bad guys from bad guys. And with Dick Jones, the one thing that I found, the one line of his that really stands out to me is when he's talking to my God, the name escapes me right now. The guy who he kills him, the creator of the RoboCop.
Yeah.
But when he does that, though, he's complaining back. He's like, "Oh, well, your head 209 never worked. Who cares if it never works properly? A few people die, but a few people get killed, and we have a lifetime supply of repairs to sell."
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, even when he's talking about something that's literally supposed to be, albeit an ultra version of protecting the streets, he's still doing it solely, like, knowing full well people are going to die so we can make a little extra money even on top of it. And it's just, that is so disgusting to me, but it's perfect for what Paul Verhoeven is trying to say with this movie. Like, no death too much, no body too far. The fact alone that when you sign up as an officer with the police force, you have a contract with Omnicorp that they get total rights to your body when you die. Like, what the fuck?
Well, it goes back to what you were saying too about the it to me, it kind of represents also the beginning of the corporate greed, which you really start as a young man, being a 14, 15-year-old, you start seeing that on the news because the mega corporations were starting to become of that. The Reaganomics were kicking in, and
which this movie is a huge criticism of Reaganomics as a whole. Really, it's a total takedown of it.
Yeah, and like Lee Iacocca High or Lee Iacocca Elementary School. You're like, oh yeah, I know who that guy is. He owns Ford or whatever, and the fact he used stuff like that, but also was kind of opening the eyes for many people about corporate lifestyles, maybe. But to me, it was done beautifully, and Kayla said it beautifully too with the gray suits. Everyone's the gray suit. No one wants to say no. It was the yes sir era.
Yeah,
and I mean, world there.
And I also felt that when Dick murdered murdered the other corporate guy. What was his name again?
Oh God, what is his name? The guy who created the RoboCop.
Well, we'll re-record that bit.
I know, I'm embarrassed to say I cannot
I'm
remember.
so embarrassed. We'll start that again.
Morton.
Morton.
Thank you.
But when Dick kills Morton, because Morton's established not even to be a good guy, I actually don't feel that bad for him. The only people I feel bad for are like Murphy and his partner, because they seem to be the only good people, and maybe the police chief has an inkling of good, but he's just been living in the city for so long he's not allowed to say anything.
But I mean, it's very clear the police chief is muzzled in this movie. But
for sure.
Oh yeah, but Morton, I feel like, represents the slightly lesser of two evils in this scenario.
Yeah.
I mean that by the fact that Morton sucks. Don't get me wrong. I wanted him to die, but I'm also just saying I don't think I necessarily needed Dick Jones to be the one who kills him.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that was his right. You know what I mean? It's but I feel like it'd be okay the other way around, considering Dick Jones is willing to have a lifeless machine kill random people at the hope of selling repair parts.
Yes.
Going forward.
And you got in my way, and you're gonna have to go. There's the whole confrontation they have in the toilet, which is an interesting part. But
which, on that note, how many movies and shows, by the way, have parodied that scene? Like, I think South Park's parodied it like 15 times.
Oh, really?
The classic go into the bathroom and then three people go out, one locks the door kind of thing.
Yeah. And you get the wide shot from behind the stall, seeing the feet, and your mate see the feet come into the shot, and you're like, oh, there we go.
It's also a really good way to introduce, like, I love how nobody here is introduced in a slick manner. Like, Dick Jones in this scene is literally introduced to the as an antagonist by taking a shit. Like, nobody here in the capitalist world is shown in any positive light, and I love that about Paul Verhoeven, because like I said, he is not nuanced with his criticism, and this is what happens when you get a far left European filmmaker to come in and do a fucking criticism of authoritarianism and capitalism, and like it was beautiful.
And you understand the world they're in literally in the first 3 minutes. Like, the opening scene, the news reporter will say, like, I'll give you the world in 3 minutes. If you actually pause the movie, it's 3 minutes in till it goes to the next scene.
Yeah.
Oh, really? See, look at that.
That whole scene is 3 minutes long.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful work by hiring the blonde lady in it, Lisa Gibbons from Entertainment Tonight. Like, it was perfect. You could and they're just so smiley and glitzy, and they're like, the war in Acapulco. You're like, what? Like, it's just fantastic. Civil War outbreak, Acapulco.
I love that whole mechanism they use in the movie of constantly cutting to commercials and news and all that, because it also feeds into a lot of what he's trying to say about how the media feeds violence, how violence feeds authoritarianism, how this feeds that. It's like you got halfway through when Murphy's been out on the streets for not even that much time, the very first thing Omnicorp's done is they've done, kids getting photos with them and getting their autograph and having RoboCop masks. And it's like, they're right off the bat. Okay, what's the next thing we can do? We can take our fucking killing machine of a person that we have outside, that we have out on the streets, and we can now make extra money by Mickey Mousifying him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's no end to this. And when you actually think about the fact that RoboCop itself the movie starts as a satire and all this, only to later on become a freaking children's animated series in real life.
Oh yeah, and comic books. Yeah, that's right.
And comic books and cereal and toys and video games and oh my god.
Two sequels, a TV show, and a remake. So
actually, 2 animated kids series and 2 live action series.
Wow, 2 live action series. Wow.
Yeah, they made a live action series, and then they made a live action miniseries of TV movies, which was labeled as a miniseries a number of years later. But that one took place 10 years after the original and ignores everything after RoboCop 1. Came out on Sci-Fi Channel back in 2001. Make of that as you will.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I'm curious now. I have not heard of this one.
Yeah. I feel like after rewatching RoboCop and being a comic book nerd, I was like, I see the influence of, I don't know if Frank Miller stole some of the ideas from The Dark Knight, because in the comic book The Dark Knight, he's always got these news flashes giving you a quick update of and moving the story forward. And I'm like, it's exactly like RoboCop. So I'm like, did
Dark Knight
Miller get
Returns?
influenced by RoboCop?
Dark Knight Returns from Frank Miller came out, what, 1988, 89? Because
a little earlier, it's like 86 or 87.
Because Frank Miller wrote RoboCop 2.
Yes.
He wrote RoboCop 2 and 3.
Exactly. So I'm like, I assume Miller was totally influenced by RoboCop. Because
I mean, I think he'd have to be. Like, look at Batman Year One. That's right off the bat. That's very very RoboCop.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
yeah, and the just the similarities of the actual movie into the storyline, and a person who's had enough and stuff like that. Not that RoboCop's a revenge movie at all, kind of, but not really, because he's just
like in the last little bit, and it's also the most justifiable revenge in the world.
Yeah, and like I love the part too, like where RoboCop is he breaks into the warehouse where all the drug dealers are, and he kills everybody, and he saved Boddicker, and he's throwing Clarence through every window, breaking down the you have the right to remain silent, and he's choking him out, and he's like, you can't kill me, I'm OCP, you're OCP, and then seeing the fire within RoboCop come out, because I love his look. I love the helmet. I love the silver and everything like that. Like I thought it just looked so great, and the black gloves and everything like that. Without the helmet, you're like, it still looks cool, but his face.
But
and all
the thing is, that's kind of part of it though. Like the moment you crack that visor and you see that eyeball behind there, the facade's gone. You're reminded though that there's a human here. There's a person behind.
Totally.
And that's, I mean, I like that it doesn't look as cool without the helmet and all that. Like, it's reminding you this isn't cool for this guy. They Frankensteined this person, essentially zombified him. Like,
good point. Yes.
And the Frankenstein parallels in this movie are pretty hardcore too.
Oh, for sure. And there's the moment too where he's just gone after Dick Jones. Dick Jones says, you can't kill me because I'm directive number 4, and he sends an Ed 209 after him. So RoboCop comes out, and the whole police force starts emptying all their shells on Robo in the parking lot, and you see there's a point where he falls down. I don't know if it's there or if it's another point with Ed 209, but he gets shot, and you see RoboCop's eye through. You see Peter Weller's eye.
That's what I'm saying, when the visor gets cracked, right?
Yeah,
when it gets smashed. Yeah,
exactly.
It's such a beautiful shot too.
Yeah.
And such a beautiful shot that feels so delicate in that shot. Just even the way that Paul Verhoeven shoots it has a little extra camera shake to it. There's a little extra emotion to it. There's a little more, I was kind of like equate that scene to kind of like, you turned on the lights and you realize that, or you suddenly realize it was a small child who was doing this the whole time or something like that. Because in this case, like I said, they've taken this man and they've taken everything about him as training. They turn him into a product and a weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
And I like that they actually end this on a happier kind of note, in that they treat him like a person at the end after he's shot Dick Jones out the window. Dick, you're fired. I used to have that on a t-shirt in high school.
Nice.
So, but I like that they ask him his name, that the president of the Corps, the actual president, goes, "What's your name, officer?" And he's able to say, "My name is Murphy."
Yeah, I know. That is and it just ends right there. Boom. Kayla, I completely agree. I love it too. And he's done the full circle now. He's back. He's the guy again. It's
interesting because in the end, the only real thing that he's like in the grand scheme of things, the only real thing he's kind of gotten back is a hint of his own humanity. Exactly. But in the crux of this movie, that is such a victory for this person at the end. Yeah, that it's it's almost depressing that that's the victory.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a start, right? And it also is the dream sequence where he has the nightmare, quote unquote, right, where he's having the flashbacks in the chair.
Oh, the two guys aren't looking at the monitors whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly, right. Classic two people on duty who are just reading the newspaper and eating something.
You literally are having this guy's nightmare projected to you, and you are having this handed to you, and you're doing nothing.
Yeah, and you see, it's little things like that remind me of the 80s film and television world that I appreciate so much. Because now today's day and era, they won't do it because they know that the audience isn't that dumb. And it's not that we're dumb, but I just love the fact that they're like, there's two of you literally sitting in front of 4 monitors, but either of you aren't watching it. Like, I love it. And, that's the beginning of the, who is this man? Well, the Frankenstein, of the relationship to the Frankenstein theory of like the man inside the machine. So, and I go Kayla.
Even the baby food that they give him looks like it's coming out of a butt. It looks like they're literally getting him to eat poop. Yeah. It is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Like that. Yeah.
Well, apparently it tasted minty.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to, right? And watching that movie, and the three of us, especially you, Kayla, hearing the stories of what Peter Weller went through. And like I relate to, I saw Chris Evans talking about shooting Civil War in Atlanta in the summertime, and just those people in those suits, like they must, like, supposedly Peter Weller lost like 2 pounds a day in sweat. Like, yeah, at least Chris Evans is getting multi-million dollars to do this. I don't know what Peter Weller's contract was for RoboCop 1, but
so
you feel for those people. Yeah. As a technician, you stand back and go, God, this, I love this, but that poor guy in that suit must have sucked. So
they had 7 of the RoboCop costumes made. I was looking this up.
Yeah.
And there were different ones. One of them had to be fireproof. There were different levels of damage. Some of the influences they actually had, they researched C-3PO. Yeah. They also were influenced by the robot designs in Metropolis. And the day the Earth stood still in 1951. But like this RoboCop costume was 11 to 36 kilograms, depending on which suit it was.
And Peter Weller's a pretty skinny guy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They had an entire internal harness with hooks just to allow him for sustained movement during the action-heavy scenes under that suit.
Yeah, and I read too that he was working with a choreographer for months, and then they put the suit on. He's like, I can't do any of that stuff.
Wow.
This thing weighs so much. So he had to bring in the choreographer again just to work on the movement. Which brings me back to that the cinemas we were talking about with the Lego and the fans making the scene. The very end of that remake scene with the multiple penises being shot it's literally like 10 seconds of RoboCop trying to get into the car, and he can't fit in. He's just like he's just going up and down because he can't.
Yeah, that's hilarious in that scene.
Oh, I know. Another wonderful RoboCop Spawn moment. So
I do recommend watching.
The remake? I didn't even see the remake. I was like,
the one with Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah, did you see it?
I did see it.
And
I mean, we're not here talking about that RoboCop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Actually, if I'm being honest, I think the movie did have some very positive aspects to it.
Yeah.
Like, to put it simply, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed RoboCop 3.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to say that completely in earnest. I do think Joel Kinnaman did the most of what he could have with that. I think he was also a victim of a lot of rewrites, a lot of studio interference. I think the cast is really solid. You got a cast including people like, the cast is actually shockingly stacked. You got like Joel Kinnaman, Michael Keaton, Jay Baruchel, Gary Oldman. Like, it's a pretty damn stacked cast. I thought the scene between the so the issues I had though was that the commentary wasn't there. It kind of made it focused on more so on just being like a kind of a straightforward action film within that story, I found.
Yeah. Okay.
And the final fight with the Ed 209, I cannot believe I was saying this, was too much.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Too much. It was, they shot it at the Vancouver Convention Center. They're doing all that stuff. Then they smash, and they're outside the convention center, and they're going on the street, and he's shooting it around the street, and all this. And I'm just like, what I love about the one from this original RoboCop is the fight feels very. I have a thing about 80s movements. I love those clunky movements. I love the idea that you can feel that this is an actual machine, even though in this particular case it's stop motion.
Yeah.
This is something I felt Guillermo del Toro did spectacularly well in the first Pacific Rim. As was factoring in the size and the movement when it comes to that sort of thing, giving the weight behind it. I felt like that the one in the movie from Paul Verhoeven, it felt very fitting. And I also love the fact that when it got to the stairwell, that also shows exactly a flaw in the concept of the Ed 209 right off the bat. This thing was never going to be able to protect the city, regardless if it ever goes crazy, this and that. This thing could never protect the city. You go up a thing of stairs and they're fucked.
Yeah.
And that was perfect. And it also shows the ingenuity of a proper human versus a machine. And these are little subtle things that Paul Verhoeven knows what he's doing, and certain filmmakers know what they're doing. And I give absolutely no blame to the director on this. I'm guaranteeing this was studio interference. But it felt like basically they're looking at this and saying, like, you know, Michael Bayify it, basically.
I find that I find with remakes of Paul Verhoeven, I felt the same thing with the Total Recall remake. Like, they didn't even go to Mars, and I was just like, I wanted a remake of that movie. I love Total Recall. It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, it's so
But
fantastic.
it wasn't what I was expecting in a remake. I would have seen the remake of Total Recall if it was called something else and not advertising that.
Yeah. And, you know, how can you not love Michael Ironside? Love Michael Ironside. And, you know, like, the bad guy literally wears a black leather jacket and black. Like, he's so great.
Yeah.
I love Ironside. And he tried to get Ironside in ROBOCOP, but he didn't do it. But Total Recall, in this household, my wife is a makeup artist in film also, and it's a touchy subject because I'm old school. She is very new school because Colin Farrell is number one on her list. So I'm gonna lose that battle. So with you guys, I'm gonna lose that battle in the house. But with you guys,
she goes with the remake.
Yes.
Oh,
and my wife loves action movies. My wife, like last week, she's like, "I want to watch Time Cop." I'm like, "See, that's why I married you. I fucking love you, woman." So,
I love Time Cop.
Yeah.
For the record, I'm not dumping on the remake as a movie. People put a lot of effort into it, and I'm always going to respect what people have done. I genuinely liked it as its own thing. I just didn't like that they sold it to me as Total Recall because it just felt like false advertising.
The other issue I tend to have with that sort of thing too is like, and I'm not going to be one of these people that says, "Oh my god, just make original movies, remake something they did." I'm not going to be one of those people because you know, as we're talking about Paul Verhoeven, we also need to recognize that both Total Recall and Starship Troopers were novel adaptations.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And they're both book adaptations, and so you can't be saying anything about original. What I will say though, when it comes to remakes about these sorts of things, there's certain movies and certain creators from certain eras that really possess their own style and their own flair. Paul Verhoeven is kind of in the same Venn diagram as like John Carpenter, who's in the same Venn diagram as like maybe even 80s De Palma, but they all kind of fit their own niche. And in the same way that you get a lot of remakes of these movies that were classics for one reason or another, like the Carrie remake, I liked it, but it didn't particularly do well. Total Recall, you took away all the personality and the style from it. It's like, and what I feel understand is like there are movies from this era, even classic movies, even movies that are classic that don't have these distinct styles that you're automatically going to miss when watching it. It'd be like if in 20 years they decide to remake the Grand Budapest Hotel and you got some TV director to do it. It's like, well, then you don't have a remake. Like, what made that movie fantastic was Wes Anderson's touch to it.
Or you get like Zack Snyder to do it, and it's a gritty city instead of like...
Actually, funnily enough, I'll even say my opinions on Snyder. I think from everything I've heard, he's apparently an incredible person to work with, and I enjoy a lot of his movies.
I do like his style.
What I will say is that I'm not gonna go around and call myself a Snyder fan, but it's like what I will say about him though is he does have a style, and if you are even with him, if let's say Sucker Punch. Okay, I'm not particularly big into the movie, but let's say 20 years from now, somebody says, well, God, I guess 7 years from now, come to think of it, because that was 2010. So 7 years from now, somebody says, let's remake Sucker Punch. Okay, who do we get? There's this guy who directed some episodes of Marvel TV. We'll get him to do it. And it's just like, but then is that what Sucker Punch originally was? And I'm not trying to be like altruistic here. There's certain movies where remakes are absolutely good, like taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3. The original's a classic, but I don't see anybody talking about the incredible visual style of that movie. When the remake came out, it was a solid remake. You know what I mean? Right. I'm a big John Carpenter fan, but even so, I'm not going to be biased on here. The remakes of Assault on Precinct 13 and The Fog, I personally think are solid remakes. But
yeah,
I don't know. That's just my mindset on that. Paul Verhoeven seems to be a victim of a lot of these sorts of remakes where you're trying to redo something from an auteur director.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're doing it in a way that you don't understand. A lot of people don't seem to ever understand the bigger nuances of these stories. And I don't know who the hell am I to say that. I'm a guy with a podcast right now trying to say that I apparently know these movies better than Len Wiseman. But it's, maybe
you both of you are very knowledgeable, and you guys are both great encyclopedias of film knowledge. So
thank you.
I feel you can back what you say, and I agree completely, because this conversation gets into the whole can of worms opens a can of worms of the studio wanting a profit over the art, and and is that what it's turned into? And thank God for like A24 and stuff like that, who still have original films and stuff like that.
There's actually a great resurgence of R-rated comedies in theaters right now.
Yes, and I'm 50. I grew up loving 80s, 90s, and by 2000, I still go to movies. I still love movies, but we've all three of us have seen the wave, the ripple effect of change throughout Hollywood, style, filming, AI, CG, everything like that. And actually, even one of your podcasts, you guys were talking about the de-aging. Oh, it's the Tron episode. You're talking about the de-aging of how it was. It should have been amazing, but it was. I had to go see Harrison. I had to go see Indiana Jones. I had to. I've seen all five.
I love the new one personally.
I liked it.
Yeah, and I was like, Mads Mikkelsen. I will see Mads Mikkelsen do anything, and as a Nazi, perfect. And but the CG of his face, of the young Indiana Jones, like that sequence went on for so long, and it always drew me out of it, because I was like, I get it. It's a big part of the scene, and God bless Toby Jones, because he's fantastic and stuff like that. And he kept, for me, Toby Jones and Mads kept that whole train sequence me sucked into it, because every time they showed Harrison Ford, I was like,
I was actually pretty okay with his. I was pretty happy with his de-aging in that one. I only found a few scenes where it really stuck out to me, is mostly when they shined a light in his face.
Yes,
I was fine with that. But it is hard to think, though, watching that. It is hard not to think to yourself, what if this was something that you were watching, but they shot this exact scene in the 80s or something, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like if that sequence was shot in 1980s, age appropriate Harrison Ford, that would have been like one of the coolest sequences of Indiana Jones,
right?
Like I thought it was a really cool thing altogether, though.
I liked the gag of progressively more Nazis in every character.
Oh my god! But the third car, I was laughing my ass off in the theater.
Yeah, and
that was just like classic indie humor, man. Like that was awesome.
With like a 50 cal gun just shooting the whole time by itself, because there's been debris in it. Like you're just like, this is great. And but back to a couple steps back to, I guess, RoboCop in the new thing. I like Joel Kinnaman. I think he does a good job. He's a nice man. I did a season and a half of The Killing. I thought he was a pretty cool guy.
I was a continuity background on The Killing for a while, in their juvenile hall stuff, and I just remember Joel Kinnaman just being a wonderful person on set.
Yeah, tough shoes to fill when someone's like, "Oh, you're gonna do remakes?" Yes, which we say, the studios will throw it out, but RoboCop is kind of, they say it's considered is it not considered a cult classic? Like
it's well,
at least
it's
favorite.
It's not a cult classic. It was a mainstream hit when it came out, and over time, it's been hailed as one of the greatest sci-fi movies of the '80s. I put that a little bit above cult classic.
Yeah, I agree. And but those are tough shoes to fill.
They are.
They're like, we're gonna do a remake of Flashdance, or what's the Footloose, and we've done it twice before. But you know what, Joel, you're gonna do it again. I'd be like, sure, no problem. But they're like, we have no one. When you're round 2 of a remake, that's a lot of pressure, and it's something that has labels like that. It's a big shoes to fill. I wish that I kind of want to see it again now, just because I want to see more of the Joel outfit. Because wasn't it quite dark with like a red?
It was
strip on it?
actually, I think that was one of the cooler aspects of the movie was the outfit design.
Yeah.
They did a good job of trying to differentiate it completely from the old RoboCop costume and try to like make it its own thing. There was a few bits about there, like they gave him a human hand still for one of his hands, which mainly happened because in the remake movie he's not shot down by Clarence Bodiger. He's killed in a car bomb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Michael Keaton play Boddicker?
I think Bodiger is not a character in the remake, but I think he plays the Bodicker equivalent.
Gotcha.
And they do a decent job of dubstep was really big at the time, unfortunately. But they did a decent job because they did a dubstep version of Basil Polidoris's RoboCop theme. His soundtrack in this movie is infectious. I really want to get that on vinyl now. Oh,
so much
it.
metal. It's like hammers hitting metal the whole time. Ding ding dong do 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 do.
Yeah,
ding,
right.
Yeah,
with a healthy mix of synth.
yes. And
was that
just like
yeah,
and even just like RoboCop opening doors. It's like it's like someone on a keyboard just going, you know what? Why don't we just hit this key for every time RoboCop? The scene particular where the guy is robbing the convenience store and there's the older couple. And he's like, where's the safe? Where's the safe? And he goes, I know where the safe is. And then RoboCop comes in. Basically, one of his first crimes. He goes out to save, and he bends the guy's muzzle and one-shots him into a bunch of fridges full of beer. Like, it's the sound effects in it and everything about it were just so fantastic. Because as a 14-year-old kid, you love robots. Robots are the best. And we had, I grew up with C-3PO. But he was a protocol droid. He was a nice guy. I want killer crushing robots. And RoboCop, it's great.
It definitely delivered on that. And actually, one thing that I didn't mention before, when we were rewatching this, I've seen it many times, but rewatching it again last week was just, it was so cool seeing almost the brutalism of the set designs. And I was like, this reminds me so much of Blade Runner. And then as I was doing research into this, I found out that they actually wanted the production designer for Blade Runner, but the producers told them they could afford the suit or the production designer. So they got a different guy, but you can see the influence.
They made the right call.
Yeah. And Blade Runner is a whole other episode, guys, because, there you go.
I've been waiting for somebody to say it, to be honest.
Yeah. It's coming, It's coming, man.
Oh, it's coming, but sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, my uncle. I've been in film 27 years. My brother got nepotism. My brother got me in. My brother was a dolly grip / crane guy. My uncles got my brother in. My uncles were both ADs and production managers, and one of my uncles went with Kurtwood Smith and said, "That guy from RoboCop is the nicest guy in the world."
Honestly, most actors I've met who play villains are the biggest sweethearts.
Right? Yeah.
I think they just get all of their aggression out. You can just get into this mustache twirling role.
Yeah.
Before we close off here, I just want to point out my position of what's called video playback. And you two know what it is, but most people who listen to this podcast don't. So my job is video playback, where it is covering all the monitors that are in front of the camera, video graphics, all that. I just want to point out that the video playback operator for RoboCop did an incredible job throughout this movie, better than I've seen for most playback in that era, because you had to use you primarily had to use like 24 frame tech. And I just want to point this out because I don't really have an opportunity often to point out how good the playback is, and something it's one of those things where I just wanted to really say the playback in this, incredible stuff.
Oh yeah, and there's so much screen coverage. Like there's, like his playback while they're watching him and as they're testing him with the pens and stuff like that. Like playback, and then the screen shows up, and just like the monitor use alone of every boardroom scene there and stuff like that. Yeah, agreed, Kevin.
Yeah.
Totally agreed.
Yeah, I don't get the option to say that often because, but this is just one of those things. I know people won't understand what I mean when I say that it's really good playback, but trust me when I say. Yeah. It is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think as all of us being technicians, we all, when watching a show of some sort, we're there to enjoy the show, but we're also there to watch what our field and how our field is being used in that product and how well it's being used. So
exactly. So that's why I'm giving it up for Peter J. Verando, Jeff Satlofer, and Richard Clark, the playback team from RoboCop.
Pretty good.
Neil, thank you
Yes.
so much for coming in today. Before we take off, is there anything that you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to put forward? Anything you're working on?
RoboCop 6 in the mind of Josh and Cam, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I would love to produce and be part of a sci-fi fun shoot. Do you yourself ever want to do sci-fi, Kevin?
I have sci-fi ideas. I have stuff I'm working on writing.
Most of my scripts are science fiction or supernatural, and I am working on writing some more realistic things.
So for anybody listening who is interested, we have links to buy RoboCop on Blu-ray, DVD, some RoboCop posters down in our description. You can also look us up on Martini Window. We are on RSS. We are on Spotify. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us everywhere.
Thanks so much, Neil. It was really good talking to you. I love chatting to you about films. We've had many conversations about films on set, so it's nice to do one on a podcast.
Oh, thank you for coming along.
It was amazing. Thank you for letting me be part of this experience.